When I joined the magazine and my whole world became full driving, I was exposed to a lot of very modified cars. I'll never forget this. We all went on a trip together with Shaun, and I think Graham was there too. There was one particular point, if I can speak freely here, I actually got quite emotional looking at it. But at the same time, I think it's a trap for young people as well. That's a bit more of a personal answer than you're expecting, I'm sure. And I think looking at all of this, that would be the thing I'm most proud of. We're going to be sitting down and going through a bit of a Q&A about how I got into this job, what was involved, and a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you guys really wanted to know. We actually put the call out on social media for a bunch of questions about me, how I got into this, and also the vehicles that I've built along the way and the experiences we've all had doing this job. So some pretty interesting questions, and I reckon we'll get into it, eh? I think growing up, Steve Irwin was my big inspiration for stuff. I used to run around the paddock dressed up like Steve Irwin in the khaki shirt and shorts, and like family holidays and stuff. We went on one to the Northern Territory and I was dressed up like him, running around, just loved it. He was definitely my inspiration for getting out there and exploring. In terms of actually wheeling, a lot of close mates of mine and a lot of guys I work with who I've learnt a lot from, like Shaun and Graham. You know, I started with them when I was quite young, and I owe a lot to what I know now because of the lessons they've taught me out in the bush. And then close mates as well who I've wheeled with, like Matt Kinsella is a prime example. Him and I are very close and I've learned a lot from him. The very first trip I ever went on was issue 242 of 4-Wheel Drive Action magazine, and it was a Meet the Team DVD. We had a 4-wheel drive then called the $0 Zook. It was sick. It was this little Zook that one of the boys in the office and I went and bought from Bathurst. I think we paid like $3 grand for it at the time, which for what it had the 1.6 Vitara conversion and 31s. It was very modified for the price we got it for. I'll never forget this. We all went on a trip together with Shaun, and I think Graham was there too. And I was in the Zook with Shaun, and we're just sitting there waiting for the camera crew to set up. And you know, there's a little bit of waiting as the boys get their shots ready and stuff, and we're sitting there. Shaun turned the Zook off and it kind of coughed and spluttered, and then he went, "Welcome to DVDs, mate." And yeah, that was, for some reason, I always remember that.
Where did the Graham is your dad joke come from?
It's not a joke. Graham is my dad. No, it came from, I was answering some questions on Instagram in my shed a few years ago, and someone just said, "Is Graham your dad?" And I responded saying yes, because I thought it'd be funny, and then it just took off. He's definitely old enough to be my dad. Yes, I was the last one on the magazine, funnily enough. When I started, the office building was full, and I was the only person in it to the end of the magazine, which was, we had a running joke that that I was the one that drove it into the ground, which is not the case. You know, it only had a certain amount of issues left. Firstly, you know, it was quite an honor to be, I guess, the last editor of a magazine that, you know, it was the biggest motoring magazine in Australia. I think it was one of the biggest men's magazines in Australia too at one point. There was one particular point, if I can speak freely here, where the office was being cleaned out right at the end, and we had backups of all the issues we'd ever done on hard copy DVDs. Went into the shed one day and there was just a skip bin full of all the old ones, and I looked at it and I actually got quite emotional looking at it, just that, I guess in a way, that the history that was there, and it wasn't needed anymore, which was a sign of the times. It was an interesting experience. The very first 4-wheel drive I ever owned was that one right there, that 2002 Toyota Hilux. Like most people, what made me choose the Hilux was grew up in them. I went camping and 4-wheel driving with my family. We had a Hilux when I was a kid. It was an 89 model petrol 22 RE, and we went everywhere in it. It was a pretty cool old Luxie. And when the time came for me to buy my own car, I guess from that experience, I wanted a Hilux. I knew a little bit about them, and for me at the time, I wanted to go out there and explore and go on adventures rather than just go out for wheeling. But as I did it more and more, I realized that the wheeling part was actually cool. There was a lot involved with it. You know, it's not just down to how good the car is. There's a skill involved in the driver and the relationship you have with your specific vehicle and the seat time you have in it. As I understood that more and more, I started saving up for different mods. A lot of them were secondhand. built the vehicle up very slowly. So I had that car for a couple of years before I started at the magazine at 4Drive Action, and that's where I was kind of like learning things. And I think when I joined the magazine and my whole world became full driving, I was exposed to a lot of very modified cars. I was also exposed to a lot of very competent people who'd built cars, and I was able to learn a lot from them, and that I definitely think accelerated my desire to do this. But at the same time, I think it's a trap for young people as well when they're building cars to think they need all the stuff on it. You know, I need beadlocks and reduction gears and lockers and big tires, and you don't. You need to go and start and learn the car before you do that. Fortunately, I was able to get some seat time in the vehicle before I was exposed to, you know, all those people and that side of life, which absolutely impacted my decision to modify the car, because I was with some people with some pretty cool cars. I wanted to keep up with them, and my car wasn't doing it anymore. I think it's a lot of people these days see builds and stuff online and think, I need that now. And, you know, just get out there and use your vehicle as it is first, and then build it up depending on what you want to do. Yes, I still have the pony. The old girl is right behind me, and it's pretty much my old man's little farm ute these days. It's essentially been retired from wheeling. It's had a hard life. I think it's earned a bit of some easier days, but right now it's used as a bit of a farm ute. My dad takes it to fire brigade and stuff, and just drives it around town. Right now there are no plans to rebirth it. It's still just cruising around, but who knows, never say never. What's the story with the Land Rovers? Well, to be honest, I've always had a soft spot for them. I read this the other day, I don't know if it was true, that said it's estimated that around a third of the world's population, the first vehicle they ever saw was a Land Rover. There's this aura about them that just screams adventure and exploration, and I think that's what appeals to me about them, and they just get on with it. The second thing I really like about Land Rovers, it's the community that have them. You know, some really incredible people who, both professionally and people who just own them privately, have been very supportive. KLR is a big example of that. The guys who work there, they all froth Land Rovers like nothing else, and they've been so helpful. When we went to Tasmania recently, I was getting messages saying, mate, if you need any parts, old mate over here has some. They look after each other, and I think because it's quite a niche group, you don't get that with every vehicle out there. And yeah, I just think they're sick. The red Hilux, that's definitely a labour of love, that vehicle it's turned into now. That was the first vehicle I went to Cape York in 2016. It was called the $1,000 Lux back then. We brought it back to the magazine headquarters at the time, and it kind of sat in the back car park for a while. So it actually went to the editor at the time, a mate of mine, Breno, and he owned it for a while. He decided to sell it and he offered it to me. And then it sat there, and I kind of was doing a few things to it, doing the conversion. And then it was actually Damien from Raptor who was like, let's make this car look like it should. And that's where we decided to do all the paint and panel and the resto mod and strip it back and paint everything and make it look how it is now. So it's in the shed now. I'm slowly ticking along with it. I will get it on the road one day. That is certain. I want to take it back down to Adelaide as its first trip to show Damien when it's all finished. But right now, it's just me in the shed, chipping away at it. The dumbest way I've gotten bogged. There'd be two, a couple of times, and it's rare. Sometimes we'll drive into something where if there's a track nearby or the camera crew want a different shot, we will sometimes need to do it again. It's rare. There's been a couple of times where I've driven into something for a particular shot and then I've done it again. This used to happen all the time with taking magazine photos, because they'd want a particular nice shot. You drive something a few times, and there's been a couple of times where I'd drive like a bog hole or a rock and be sweet, and then go and drive it again and I get stuck. That happens a fair bit. And then I think the second one would be, there's been a few times where I've just been a bit of a peanut and I've just forgot to lock my hubs and driven into something and gotten quite stuck and gone, oh, I'm not in full drive. Do I think the four-wheel drive scene has changed? Yeah, massively, hugely. I think in some instances, it's very easy to forget what it's all about. And you know, build things or take your vehicle wheeling for the wrong reasons.
Do you think four-wheel driving in Australia has gotten too expensive?
No, definitely not. I think it's easy to think you need all the things in the car, but you'll be amazed at how little you need. Even the Simpson Desert, we're going out there and we're filming and living out of these vehicles that aren't that modified. Turns out it's fine. Like you just don't need a lot of stuff. You need the basics, obviously, and you need to be safe and you need to have basic tools and recovery gear and all that sort of stuff, absolutely. But you don't need the coffee machine and the microwave and the 400 amps of lithium and all the things that open and shut on your four-wheel drive. They're great, and if you're living on the road full time, yeah, maybe. But I think it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking you need everything on your four-wheel drive to get out there and do it.
What's your take on the government closing tracks?
Personally, I think it's a two-way street. In some instances, as brutal as it is to say, it might take us losing some of these iconic places for us to really wake up and band together and do more. And we can always do more. But at the same time, I think that there needs to be a bit more of a fair and open dialogue between the government and four-wheel drivers to talk about how we can keep these places open. We're not eco-terrorists. We're, 99.9% of the people four-wheel driving are doing it because they love the bush and they want to get out there. Yeah, there's a very small amount that are doing the wrong thing, but there's a tendency to think, we're all out, we're hoons wrecking the bush, which we're not. We can always do more with, calling out your mates if they're doing the wrong thing, picking up your rubbish, burying your poo. That's a big one, just bury your poo. Looking after the places a bit more. We are going to lose them if we don't. Like the telly track in Cape York, every time we go back, more and more people are doing it, and it's becoming more popular, and there's more rubbish every year, and it's only going to get to a certain point before it just gets shut. So I'd take the US as a prime example. There's 330 million Americans, and the Rubicon Trail in the US is so appreciated and looked after and cared for, and there's no rubbish, and it's well maintained, and there's sheriffs who drive the track in modified Jeeps to make sure you're doing the right thing and stuff like that. And I think we need to come together as a community more, for one, but then there also needs to be more communication from the government as well, so that we can all work together, because this place is for everyone to enjoy and experience, and I think we all need to do a better job of looking after it. I wouldn't say there's been like super crazy ones. I think the one that I was quite shocked with was at Bathurst a few years ago. Shaun and I signed a couple of blokes' legs, and they got our signatures tattooed on their legs, which was, that was quite a lot to take in. I was quite surprised by that. Dream 3-car garage. One of them would be that Hilux, that side axle swapped Hilux. I'll have that for the rest of my life. One of them would be a Sherman tank, for sure, and drive around on my property, and that I get one day. That's going to be in there somewhere. And the third one would probably be an R32 GTR. Yeah, the tank would be the one I'd really want. It's probably the most expensive out of those three. I think the hardest track I've ever driven in terms of consequence in the US, in Moab, they'd be the most consequential. But in terms of skill, probably 6 stage in Yarwell. There's a section there called the Rock Garden. When I first drove it in that vehicle, not long after we finished it, and I needed a bit more seat time. I definitely hadn't had as much experience as I have now. And in that Rock Garden, there was a bit where I was stuck, and I had to winch, drive, communicate, and watch the spotter at the same time. I was like, oh wow, actually, there's a lot going on here. And nowadays, that's a little bit different driving through there. And that's as a result of seat time. So, I think that was a big lesson for me in just getting in your vehicle and really putting it in situations where you've got to think about where you're putting your tyres and what your spotter's telling you and all that sort of stuff. So there was a lot going on there. And I've driven that track, fortunately, many times since then, and it's different now. But that was a good lesson on one of the harder tracks I've done.
What's your KFC order?
My KFC order, it's funny, I had it today. It'd be a large zinger stacker box, and sometimes if I'm feeling a little bit naughty, I'll get some extra hot and crispy boneless as well. Yum. Oh, yummy boys. I think the things that I appreciate the most, number one would be the places I've been able to see and the people I've been able to do it with. I've learned so much and seen so many amazing places with some just genuinely kind and good people. I think that's been awesome and something I'll never forget.
If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Good question. Slow down. It's all good. That's a bit more of a personal answer than you're expecting, I'm sure. Yeah, I think in terms of wheeling, I would say just keep doing what you're doing and learn as much as you can off the people who know more than you do, because I'm very fortunate to shadow a lot of people in the industry who are true masters of their craft and in many different things, such as, you know, suspension, like Simon from Tough Dog, fabrication, you know, Damien from Raptor. The thing I appreciate the most about that is just learning off them or being around them and asking them questions. And because they're just so good at what they do, the knowledge you get from that, not a lot of people get that sort of access. You know, it's hard to walk in off the street and talk to someone like that. I think what I've learnt from doing that, I'll always be grateful for and thankful for to the people who've taken the time to share their knowledge with me. And if you're a young person watching this and you're not sure where to go, look for people who have more experience than you in the industry and in your, I guess, circle, and just listen to what they have to say. You don't have to take all of it on board, but take little bits from one person and apply it to what you need to know. Learn as much as you can off the people who know more than you. My legacy in the four-wheel drive scene. I think four-wheel drive 24/7 and four-wheel drive action has always been about trying to show people that you can get out there for less, that you don't need to spend a lot of money to see this amazing country, and hopefully we've been able to do that. You know, Jesse and I have taken some pretty stock rigs over the years out and about that we haven't spent a lot of money. I mean, the Pony, I think we bought it for like $3.5 grand, and yeah, it's a bit modified now, but a lot of it was with secondhand parts. And I think if you really truly love something and want to do it, you'll find a way to make it happen. I think hopefully we've been able to show people that you can do it, and given people the confidence to go and explore this country and see what it has to offer. And then on a personal level, one of the projects I am the most proud of would be the Young Veterans Parenti we built last year. That I've been told by the CEO of Young Veterans that doing that has done a little bit of good for veterans who have watched the show and stuff and have reached out. And I think looking at all of this, that would be the thing I'm most proud of. If I was able to help, one person who needed a bit of help, then I'm happy. Well, there you go. Hopefully you learnt a little bit more about how I got into this, and yeah, I answered some of your questions. But yeah, I'll catch you out in the bush on 4wheel drive 24/7. Cheers.